3 knocks. That's all it took to shatter everything Jane thought she knew about survival. She'd been running for hours through a storm that felt like the sky itself wanted her dead. Blood soaking through makeshift bandages. Silver flame burning in her chest, the curse that marked her for execution. And then she found it. An abandoned hut. Rotting walls. Broken door. But shelter. A place to catch her breath before the hunting party found her and finished what the marking ceremony started. She should have kept running. Because when those 3 knocks echoed through that derelict shack, measured, deliberate, almost polite, she knew. Someone had found her. And in a world where her own pack had just tried to kill her for existing, found meant dead. But here's the thing about Jane's story that'll keep you up tonight. Those knocks? They weren't from the wolves hunting her. They were from something far more dangerous. 2 identical voices speaking from the other side of that rotting door, calling her by name, claiming they'd been waiting for her. Twin alphas. And they weren't there to save her. Not exactly. They were there because of a prophecy 500 years old. A prophecy that said she would either reunite the fractured wolf packs or burn them all to ash. And nobody, not even Jane, knew which path she'd choose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the moment everything fell apart. Back to the marking ceremony where Jane's world exploded into silver fire and screams. Before you hear what happened next, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button right now for Cindy's Wolfheart stories, because what I'm about to tell you gets darker, more twisted, and absolutely heartbreaking before it gets better. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of what comes next. Drop a comment if you're already hooked, because this girl's story is going to wreck you in the best possible way. Now, let's go back to the beginning. To the night Jane Blackwood discovered that sometimes the curse you're born with is actually a gift the world isn't ready to understand. The rain comes down like judgment itself, each drop a tiny blade cutting through the darkness of the forest. Jane runs. Not the graceful, powerful run of a wolf in her prime, but the desperate stumbling of someone who knows the difference between surviving and merely delaying the inevitable. Her feet catch on exposed roots, her shoulder slams against rough bark, and still she pushes forward because stopping means facing what she left behind. Blood seeps through the makeshift bandage wrapped around her forearm. The scent of it mingles with pine and wet earth, and she knows, God, she knows, that any wolf within miles can track her now. The marking ceremony was supposed to be her salvation, her entry into adulthood, her acceptance by the Silver Pine Pack. Instead, it became her condemnation. Thunder rolls overhead, and for a moment, the sound drowns out the memory of their voices. Abomination. Cursed. The silver flame will destroy us all. Elder Thorne's face swims before her eyes, twisted with fear and disgust as her power manifested during the ritual. Not the warm golden glow of a normal wolf. Not even the fierce red of an alpha's dominance. Silver. Pure, burning silver that erupted from her skin like starlight given form. She can still feel it now, coiled beneath her ribs, pulsing in time with her racing heart. The power that marks her as something other. Something wrong. The trees seem to lean away from her as she passes, as if even nature itself recognizes what she is and wants no part of it. The abandoned hut appears through the sheets of rain like a ghost materializing from mist. It's barely standing, 3 walls of weathered wood, a roof that sags dangerously in the middle, a door hanging from one hinge. But it's shelter, and shelter is all she needs right now. Just somewhere to catch her breath, to bind her wounds properly, to figure out what the hell she's supposed to do now that her entire world has collapsed. Jane pushes through the broken door and stumbles inside. The interior smells of rot and old leaves and something else, something she can't quite identify. Animal, maybe? Or the lingering trace of whoever used this place last. She doesn't care. She sinks to her knees on the dirt floor, her whole body shaking from exhaustion and shock and the cold that's seeped into her bones. The silver flame flickers inside her chest, responding to her emotional turmoil. She presses both hands against her sternum, willing it down, begging it to stay hidden. Please, she whispers into the darkness. Please, just let me be normal. Just for tonight. But the flame doesn't listen. It never listens. It's been part of her since birth, dormant until tonight, waiting for the marking ceremony to bring it roaring to life. Her mother used to tell her stories when she was small, fairy tales about wolves blessed by the moon goddess, about ancient bloodlines that carried gifts from the old magic. Jane thought they were just stories. Something to make a runt pup feel special. She was wrong. The wind howls outside, and with it comes a sound that freezes her blood. Howls. Multiple voices, harmonizing in the ancient language of the hunt. They're coming for her. The pack elders, the enforcers, maybe even the alpha himself. They won't let something like her live, won't risk the prophecy coming true. Jane forces herself to her feet, even though her legs tremble with the effort. She needs to keep moving. The hut was a mistake, a moment of weakness. She should have kept running, should have put as much distance as possible between herself and Silver Pine territory. But where would she go? What pack would take in an unmarked wolf? What lone wolf could survive without a pack's protection? She's reaching for the door when she hears it. Not howls this time. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, approaching through the rain. 2 sets, moving in perfect synchronization. Jane's breath catches in her throat. Her hand finds a broken piece of wood, something she can use as a weapon, though she knows it's useless. If they're enforcers, if they're trained fighters, she won't stand a chance. The footsteps stop just outside the door. A heartbeat of silence stretches between her and whoever waits on the other side. Jane's grip tightens on the wood, her pulse thundering in her ears. The silver flame surges upward, responding to her fear, and she tastes metal on her tongue. Then someone knocks. 3 measured taps against the rotting wood, perfectly spaced, almost polite. It's so unexpected, so utterly wrong for the situation, that Jane actually laughs. The sound comes out broken and slightly hysterical. "We know you're in there, Jane Blackwood." The voice is male, deep and smooth as aged whiskey, carrying an authority that makes her wolf instincts scream submission even though she hasn't shifted yet. "We're not here to hurt you." A second voice follows, identical to the first yet somehow different in its cadence. "Open the door. The storm is getting worse, and we need to talk before your scent draws every wolf in the territory." Twin voices. Twin presences she can feel even through the walls. Alpha presences, thick and overwhelming, pressing against her senses like a physical weight. Before you hear what happens next, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the world was hunting you? Like every choice you made led you deeper into a trap you didn't even know existed? If this story is already pulling at something inside you, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Join Cindy's Wolfheart stories, because we're just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Drop a comment if you're already Team Jane, because this girl is going to need all the support she can get. Jane doesn't open the door. Instead, she presses her back against the far wall, the broken piece of wood held before her like a talisman against evil. "How do you know my name?" Her voice sounds steadier than she feels. "Who are you?" "We're the reason you're still alive right now." The first voice again, matter of fact. "Elder Thorn wanted you executed on sight. The Alpha wanted you bound and caged. We convinced them to let you run instead." The second voice cuts in, softer but no less commanding. "We've been tracking you for the last 3 hours, making sure the hunting parties went in the wrong direction. But our time is running out, and if you don't let us in, all that effort was for nothing." She wants to believe it's a trick, some elaborate trap to make her lower her guard. But something in their voices resonates with a truth she can feel in her bones. And more than that, she can sense their power through the walls. Not hostile. Not aggressive. Just vast and ancient and utterly overwhelming. "Why?" The question comes out as barely more than a whisper. "Why would you help me?" Silence stretches for a long moment. Then the first voice speaks again, and this time there's something raw in it, something that sounds almost like pain. "Because we know what it's like to be hunted for what you are instead of what you've done. Because the prophecy isn't what they think it is. And because, Jane Blackwood, we've been waiting for you." Her hand moves to the door before her conscious mind registers the decision. The hinges scream as she pulls it open, revealing two figures standing in the downpour, silhouetted against the storm-dark sky. They're identical. Perfect mirrors of each other in height and build and the way they hold themselves with predatory grace. But as lightning flashes overhead, Jane sees the differences. The one on the left has eyes like amber, warm and burning with an intensity that makes her breath catch. The one on the right has eyes of silver, true silver, the color of her flame, the color that marked her as cursed. Both of them are soaked through, their dark hair plastered to their skulls, their clothes clinging to bodies that speak of violence and power held in careful check. Both of them are staring at her with expressions she can't quite read. Recognition. Hunger. Something that might be relief. Twin alphas, she breathes, and it's not a question because suddenly everything makes sense and nothing makes sense at all. Twin alphas are legend, rare enough that most wolves go their entire lives without encountering a pair. Rarer still are twins who both carry alpha power instead of splitting it between them. And here stand two of them, on her doorstep, in the middle of nowhere, claiming they've been waiting for her. The one with amber eyes steps forward first, moving slowly like he's approaching a wounded animal. My name is Damon. This is my brother Luca. And we have about 10 minutes before the hunting party realizes they're on the wrong trail and doubles back to search this area. Luca remains where he is, silver eyes locked on her face with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. You're hurt. Your arm. Jane glances down at the blood-soaked bandage, having almost forgotten about it in the chaos of the last few minutes. It's nothing. Just a scrape from running through the forest. It's not nothing if it's leaving a blood trail. Damon reaches the doorway, stopping just at the threshold. May we come in? Or would you prefer to keep standing in the open where any wolf with a nose can find you? She should say no. Should slam the door and go out the back, if there even is a back, should run until her legs give out rather than trust two strange alphas who claim they've been waiting for her. But she's so tired. So cold. And there's something in Damon's amber eyes, something in the way Luca watches her with that silver gaze, that makes her want to believe them. Jane steps back, gesturing them inside. They enter together, moving with that same synchronized grace, and suddenly the tiny hut feels even smaller. Their presence fills the space, overwhelming and impossibly intense, making the air itself feel charged with electricity. Damon shrugs off his jacket and extends it toward her. You're shivering. She is. She hadn't noticed until he said it, but now she can feel the violent trembling that's taken over her body. Shock, maybe. Or just the cold finally catching up with her. She takes the jacket, wrapping it around her shoulders. It's warm from his body heat and smells of pine and something else, something distinctly male and alpha that makes her wolf stir with interest. Luca kneels beside her, producing a first aid kit from seemingly nowhere. Let me see your arm. Where did you? She stops, shaking her head. Never mind. I don't even care anymore. His fingers are gentle as he unwraps the soaked bandage, revealing the long gash that runs from her elbow to her wrist. It's deeper than she thought, still bleeding sluggishly. Luca's jaw tightens as he examines it. This needs stitches. We don't have time for that, Damon says from where he's positioned himself by the door, keeping watch. The hunting party is closer than I thought. I can hear them. Jane strains her ears, but catches nothing over the sound of rain and wind. Then again, these are alphas. Their senses are sharper than hers by an order of magnitude. Luca meets her eyes, and there's a question in his silver gaze. I can help, but you have to trust me. Do you trust me, Jane? She doesn't. She shouldn't. But she nods anyway, because what choice does she have? He places his palm over the wound, and power floods through her. Not the silver flame that's coiled inside her chest, but something different. Something that feels like moonlight given form, cool and soothing and ancient. The pain in her arm fades, replaced by a tingling warmth. When Luca pulls his hand away moments later, the gash is closed, leaving only a thin pink line that will probably fade to nothing by morning. How did you? Jane's voice fails her. She's heard of alphas with healing abilities, but it's rare. So rare that she's never actually met one before. We're full of surprises, Luca says with a slight smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Just like you are. Damon turns from the door, his expression grave. We need to move. Now. They're less than a mile out, and they're spreading to cover more ground. Where are we supposed to go? Jane demands, rising to her feet. Every direction leads deeper into Silver Pine territory. Unless you're suggesting I try to cross into neutral lands, and that's at least a 2-day journey on foot. The twins exchange a look, one of those silent communications that only siblings can manage. Then Damon speaks, his voice low and intense. We're taking you to the sanctuary. It's neutral ground, protected by old magic that even the pack elders respect. You'll be safe there. The sanctuary is a myth, Jane says automatically. A story parents tell their cubs about a place where marked wolves can live without fear. It's real, Luca counters, already moving toward the back wall of the hut. He runs his hands along the rotting wood until he finds what he's looking for, a section that swings inward, revealing a narrow passage. And it's a lot closer than you think. But we have to go now, before they catch our scent. Jane stares at the hidden passage, her mind reeling. Nothing about tonight makes sense. Not the silver flame, not the twin alphas appearing out of nowhere, not the secret door in an abandoned hut. She feels like she's stepped into one of her mother's old stories, where nothing is as it seems and every choice leads to unexpected consequences. Why are you doing this? She asks again, needing to understand. What do you want from me? Damon moves to stand beside her, close enough that she can feel the heat radiating from his body. His amber eyes lock on hers, intense and burning with something she can't name. We don't want anything from you, Jane. We're trying to protect you. Because you're not cursed, you're chosen. And the prophecy everyone fears? It's not about destruction. It's about salvation. Before she can respond, before she can even process what he's saying, a howl splits the night. Close. Too close. Multiple voices raised in the cry of wolves who've found their prey. Time's up, Luca says grimly from the passage entrance. Choose now, Jane. Come with us, or face them alone. She looks between the twins, Damon with his amber eyes and steady presence, Luca with his silver gaze and gentle hands. She thinks about the pack that cast her out, about the elders who called her abomination, about the alpha who wanted her caged like an animal. She thinks about the silver flame burning in her chest, about the prophecy she doesn't understand, about the word chosen and what it might mean. Then she steps into the passage and the twins follow, pulling the false wall closed behind them just as voices rise outside the hut. The darkness swallows them whole, and Jane can only pray she hasn't just made the worst mistake of her life. The passage is narrow enough that Jane's shoulders brush both walls as she moves through the darkness. Luca leads the way, somehow navigating without light, while Damon brings up the rear, his presence a solid wall between her and whatever pursuit might discover the hidden door. Keep moving, Luca murmurs from ahead. The passage runs for about half a mile before we reach the surface. There are no turns, no branches. Just follow the sound of my voice. Jane does as he says, one hand trailing along the rough stone wall, her feet finding purchase on what feels like hand-cut steps descending into the earth. The air grows cooler, damper, and she can hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. As they walk, her mind drifts back. Not by choice, she'd rather focus on putting one foot in front of the other, but the memories come anyway, flooding through her like the silver flame that's still pulsing beneath her skin. She remembers being 7 years old, small for her age, with hair so pale it looked white in certain light. The other cubs called her Ghost Girl and made up stories about how she must be half dead, half spirit, something not quite wolf. Her mother would smooth her hair back and tell her she was special, that being different was a gift even when it felt like a curse. You have old magic in your blood, her mother would say, her voice soft as summer wind. The same magic that flowed through the first wolves, the ones who walked with the moon goddess herself. One day, when you're ready, that magic will show itself. And when it does, You'll understand why you were always meant to stand apart. Her mother died 3 months later. Fever, the pack healer said. But Jane heard the whispers. Heard how some of the elders muttered about bloodlines that should have ended generations ago, about curses that passed from mother to daughter, about mercy killings that prevented greater catastrophe. She was 8 when she started hiding. Hiding her differences, hiding her thoughts, hiding anything that might make her stand out even more than her ghost-pale hair already did. She learned to make herself small, to speak only when spoken to fade into the background of pack life. She was 12 when the dream started. Visions of silver fire consuming everything she touched, of wolves bowing before her in reverence and fear, of a voice that whispered prophecies in a language she shouldn't understand but somehow did. She told no one. Kept them locked inside her mind like shameful secrets, convinced that if anyone knew, they'd cast her out immediately. And she was 18, just 18, when the marking ceremony finally arrived. The ritual that would welcome her into full pack membership, that would give her an adult name and a place in the hierarchy. She'd been so hopeful. So desperately, pathetically hopeful that maybe, just maybe, she could be normal. The ceremony took place under a full moon, with the entire pack gathered in the sacred clearing. Elder Thorn called each young wolf forward, speaking the ancient words, marking their foreheads with ash and moonwater. One by one they shifted for the first time, their bodies flowing into wolf form, and the pack celebrated each transformation with howls of approval. Then it was her turn. She remembers kneeling before the elder, feeling the cold touch of ash on her skin. She remembers the words washing over her, the power building in her chest. She remembers thinking maybe it would be okay, maybe she'd shift like everyone else, maybe her fears were unfounded. Then the silver flame erupted. It poured from her skin like liquid starlight, bathing the entire clearing in cold fire that burned without consuming. Wolves scattered, crying out in fear and confusion. Elder Thorn stumbled backward, his eyes wide with horror. And Jane stood at the center of it all, unable to control the power that flooded through her, unable to make it stop. The prophecy, someone screamed. It's her. The destroyer. They descended on her like a pack bringing down wounded prey. Grabbed her arms, forced her to the ground, bound her wrists with silver chains that burned against her skin. Alpha Kieran loomed over her, his face twisted with disgust. Abomination, he spat. Your bloodline should have been culled years ago. Your mother's mercy is what brought this curse upon us. She tried to explain. Tried to tell them she didn't understand, didn't know how to control it, didn't mean any harm. But no one listened. They were too busy arguing about whether to kill her immediately or wait until dawn, whether to burn the body or bury it, whether the silver flame was contagious. That's when Damon and Luca appeared. She remembers them stepping from the shadows at the edge of the clearing, identical and commanding and radiating alpha power that made even Kieran fall silent. They spoke in low voices with the elders, negotiated something she couldn't hear from where she lay bound on the ground. Finally, Kieran nodded, reluctantly, and cut her bonds. You have until midnight to leave Silver Pine territory, he told her, his voice cold as winter stone. If any wolf sees you after that, they have permission to kill you on sight. She'd run then, stumbling into the forest with blood on her wrists and tears streaming down her face. Run without direction or plan or hope, just desperate animal instinct to get away from the hate and fear in their eyes. And now here she is, following 2 alpha strangers through a hidden passage beneath the earth, trusting them because she has no other choice. Jane. Luca's voice pulls her from the memory. We're almost there. Can you see the light ahead? She blinks, focusing on the present, and realizes he's right. There's a faint glow somewhere ahead, growing stronger with each step. The passage begins to widen, the ceiling rising until she can no longer touch both walls simultaneously. What is this place? She asks, her voice echoing strangely in the expanding space. The old tunnels, Damon answers from behind her. They were built centuries ago, back when the packs were constantly at war. Safe routes between territories, escape passages from strongholds, hiding places for the vulnerable. Most of them have been forgotten, but a few of us still remember. The light grows brighter, and suddenly the passage opens into a vast underground chamber. Jane stops in her tracks, her breath catching at the sight before her. The chamber is enormous, easily large enough to hold her entire former pack. The walls are covered in carvings. Wolves and moons and symbols she doesn't recognize, all glowing with a faint silver light that seems to come from within the stone itself. Crystals grow from the ceiling like frozen lightning, casting rainbow shadows across everything they touch. But what steals her breath is the pool at the chamber's center. Water so clear it looks like glass, reflecting the crystal light, surrounded by stones carved with more of those ancient symbols. And floating above the water's surface, suspended in defiance of all natural law, is a flame. Pure silver, the exact shade of the power that burns inside her chest. "What is this?" she whispers, unable to look away from the floating flame. Luca moves to stand beside her, his silver eyes reflecting the light. "This is the heart of the first pack. The place where the moon goddess first blessed our kind with the gift of transformation. And that flame," he pauses, choosing his words carefully. "That flame has been burning here for thousands of years. Waiting. Waiting for what?" "For you," Damon says simply. He's moved to her other side, effectively surrounding her with their presence. For the one who carries its twin inside her. For the silver wolf who was prophesied to reunite the scattered packs or bring them all to ruin. Jane's legs suddenly feel weak. She sinks to her knees beside the pool, staring at her reflection in the still water. Her face looks ghostly in the silver light, her pale hair seeming to glow, her eyes wide and lost. "I don't understand. I'm nobody. Just a runt from a backwater pack. How can I possibly be part of some ancient prophecy? Your mother never told you?" Luca kneels beside her, his voice gentle. "About your father? About where you really come from?" She shakes her head mutely. Her mother had always avoided questions about her father, changing the subject or saying it didn't matter, that the pack was all the family they needed. Damon crouches on her other side, making a triangle of the three of them around the pool. "Your father was from the first bloodline. The original wolves, the ones who carried the goddess's gift in its purest form. His line was thought to have died out centuries ago, wiped out during the Great Purge when the packs decided such power was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. But he survived," Luca continues. "Went into hiding, lived among regular wolves, tried to bury what he was. And then he met your mother, fell in love, and I was born," Jane finishes, her voice hollow. "The silver flame." "Not just the silver flame," Damon corrects. "The silver wolf. The one prophesied to return when the packs had grown weak and fractured, when we'd forgotten what it meant to be truly united. You're not a curse, Jane. You're a catalyst." She wants to laugh at the absurdity of it, wants to cry at the weight of it, wants to scream at the unfairness of being born into a destiny she never asked for. Instead, she just stares at the floating flame and feels the answering power in her chest surge in recognition. "I can't control it," she admits, the words barely audible. "The flame. It just happens. Usually when I'm emotional or scared or angry. I don't know how to make it come when I want it or go away when I don't." "That's because you've been fighting it," Luca says. "Trying to push it down, hide it, pretend it doesn't exist. But power like this can't be suppressed forever. It always finds a way out. We can help you," Damon adds. "Teach you to work with it instead of against it. But first, you have to make a choice." Jane drags her gaze away from the flame to look at him. "What kind of choice?" His amber eyes are serious, weighing. "You can stay in the sanctuary. Hide here where the old magic will protect you. Live out your days in safety but isolation. Or," he pauses, letting the moment stretch. "Or you can accept what you are. Embrace the prophecy. Let us help you become the silver wolf you were meant to be. And if I choose the second option?" She needs to know what she's agreeing to. What happens then? The twins exchange another of those silent looks. Then Lucas speaks, his silver eyes finding hers. then everything changes. The packs will have to acknowledge you. The prophecy will move forward. And you, Jane Blackwood, will have to decide whether you're going to save us all or watch us burn. The silver flame pulses inside her chest, and for the first time since it manifested, she doesn't try to push it down. Instead, she lets it rise, lets it fill her, lets it show her glimpses of what could be. She sees packs reunited under a silver moon. Sees wolves standing together against a darkness she doesn't yet understand. Sees herself no longer running but leading, no longer hiding but burning bright enough to light the way for others. But she also sees the cost. The pain that comes with power. The losses that accompany change. The weight of responsibility for lives beyond her own. She thinks about the pack that cast her out, about the mother who died keeping secrets, about the father she never knew who hid from his destiny. She thinks about spending the rest of her life in this beautiful underground prison, safe but useless, protected but purposeless. Then she looks at the twins Damon and Luca, alphas who somehow believe in her, who risked their own standing to save her, who kneel beside her now offering not just protection but possibility. "Teach me," she says, and the words feel like both a surrender and a declaration of war. "Help me understand what I am. Help me control the flame." And then, she swallows hard. "Then we'll see about prophecies and destinies and saving the world." Damon smiles, and it transforms his entire face from stern to radiant. "That's all we're asking. A chance." Luca reaches out, hesitating just before his fingers touch her shoulder. "May I?" She nods, and his hand settles warm and solid against her. The gesture feels protective and claiming all at once, and something inside her, her wolf maybe, or just her exhausted heart, responds to it with a longing she wasn't prepared for. "Rest tonight," he says. "Tomorrow, we begin your training. But for now, you're safe. You're protected. And you're not alone anymore." The last 4 words hit her harder than anything else that's happened tonight. Not alone anymore. After years of isolation, of being the outcast, the ghost girl, the one everyone whispered about but nobody claimed, she's not alone. The silver flame flares inside her chest, but this time it doesn't feel like a curse. This time it feels almost like hope. Morning comes differently in the sanctuary. There's no sunrise to mark the passage of time, no birdsong to herald the dawn. Instead, the crystals overhead gradually brighten, shifting from deep twilight purple to soft rose gold, mimicking the natural progression of day without ever actually seeing the sun. Jane wakes on a bed that's far more comfortable than anything she had in her pack's communal den. Soft furs, pillows that smell of lavender and cedar, blankets woven from material so fine it feels like water against her skin. For a moment, she forgets where she is, why she's here. Then memory crashes back, and with it, the silver flame stirs inside her chest. She sits up slowly, taking in her surroundings properly for the first time. The chamber she's been given is smaller than the main cavern, but no less beautiful. The walls are covered in more of those ancient carvings, these ones depicting wolves in various stages of transformation. Some mid-shift, caught between human and beast. Others fully wolf, their carved forms so lifelike she half expects them to start moving. "You're awake." Luca's voice comes from the doorway, and she turns to find him leaning against the frame, silver eyes watching her with that same intensity from last night. "How do you feel?" Confused, she answers honestly. "Scared. Like I'm dreaming and any moment I'll wake up back in that abandoned hut with the hunting party closing in." He pushes off from the doorway, moving into the room with that predatory grace all alphas possess. But there's something different about the way he moves. More controlled, more aware of his own power and how it might affect others. "You're not dreaming. And the hunting party gave up the search 3 hours ago. As far as Silver Pine Pack is concerned, you either died in the storm or crossed into neutral territory. Either way, you're no longer their problem." The words should bring relief. Instead, they just make her feel empty. That was her pack. Her home for 18 years. And now they've simply erased her. Like she never existed at all. Luca seems to sense her thoughts. Their loss. And eventually, they'll realize what they threw away. But by then, it will be too late. Late for what? For apologies. Damon enters the room behind his brother, carrying a tray laden with food. Fresh bread, honey, berries that must have been preserved from last summer's harvest, strips of cooked meat that make her stomach growl embarrassingly loud. You need to eat. Training requires energy, and you've been running on nothing but fear and adrenaline for too long. He sets the tray on a small table, then both twins settle onto the floor across from her bed, making themselves deliberately lower than her position. It's a gesture of respect, of non-threat, and it makes something in her chest ache with gratitude. What kind of training? She asks, reaching for the bread even as her eyes stay locked on them. Control, Luca says. Understanding. Connection with your power instead of fear of it. And information, Damon adds. About the prophecy, about your bloodline, about what's really at stake here. Because the story the packs have been told for centuries? It's incomplete. Deliberately so. Jane tears off a piece of bread, chews slowly while her mind works through the implications. Who would deliberately change a prophecy? And why? The Council of Elders, Luca explains. 500 years ago, when your bloodline was nearly wiped out during the Purge, they took the original prophecy, the true words spoken by the moon goddess herself, and twisted them. Changed reunite to destroy. Changed transform to curse. Turned a promise of salvation into a threat of annihilation. But why? The question bursts from her, desperate and confused. If the prophecy was about helping the packs, why would they want to hide that? Damon leans forward, his amber eyes intense. Because the original prophecy demanded change. Unity. The dissolution of pack boundaries and hierarchies. The elders didn't want that. They liked their power, their territories, their ability to control who mated with whom, who lived where, who answered to whom. So they convinced everyone that the Silver Wolf was a threat, that your bloodline needed to be eliminated for the safety of all wolf kind. Jane sets down the bread, her appetite suddenly gone. And my father? You said he survived the Purge. How? He ran, Luca says quietly. Watched his entire family slaughtered, his pack decimated, his home burned to ashes. He was barely 20 years old, traumatized and alone, carrying a power he'd been told his entire life was sacred, only to learn the world now viewed it as monstrous. He buried himself in the most remote pack he could find, suppressed his gifts, tried to live as normal a life as possible. Until he met my mother, Jane finishes, pieces clicking into place. And the power that skipped him manifested in me instead. Not skipped, Damon corrects. He still had it. Used it, actually, to hide his true scent, to mask his bloodline from anyone who might recognize it. But you, he pauses, choosing his words carefully. You're stronger than he ever was. Purer. The power has been building through generations, waiting for someone who could carry its full weight. And that someone is you. She wants to reject it. Wants to tell them they're wrong, that she's just a scared girl who wants to be left alone. But the silver flame in her chest knows different. It recognizes the truth in their words, responds to it with a surge of heat that makes her gasp. Easy, Luca says, immediately moving to her side. His hand finds hers, and cool moonlight power flows from his touch, soothing the flame's intensity. Don't fight it. Just breathe through it. She does, focusing on the rhythm of her breath until the flame settles back into its usual pulse. When she opens her eyes, both twins are watching her with expressions that mix concern with something that looks almost like reverence. The flame responds to emotion, Damon explains. Fear, anger, pain, they all feed it, make it harder to control. But it also responds to acceptance, to purpose, to connection with others who understand what you are. Is that what you both are? She looks between them, seeing the way they mirror each other's positions, the way they seem to communicate without words. You understand? Luca's silver eyes hold hers. We're twin alphas, Jane. Born with power that should have been split between us, but somehow remained whole in both. The pack tried to force one of us to submit, to take a beta position so there would only be one alpha. When we refused, when we insisted on sharing leadership equally, they cast us out. Called us abominations. Said we were disrupting the natural order. So we built our own pack, Damon continues. Found other outcasts, other wolves who'd been rejected for being different. And we've been waiting. Because we knew the prophecy was real, that eventually the silver wolf would manifest, and when she did, she'd need allies who understood what it meant to be cast aside for gifts you never asked for. The weight of it settles over Jane like a physical thing. These alphas, these powerful, commanding presences, had built an entire pack around the hope that she would one day exist. Had spent years preparing for her arrival. Had risked their own safety to pull her from the hunting party's path. I don't know if I can be what you need, she admits, her voice small. What if I'm not strong enough? What if the prophecy is wrong, or I can't control the flame, or... Then we figure it out together, Luca interrupts, his hand still warm around hers. That's what pack means. Not perfection, but presence. Not strength alone, but strength shared. Damon rises, extending his hand to her. Come. There's something we need to show you. Something that will help you understand what you're truly capable of. She takes his hand, lets him pull her to her feet. Luca rises with them, and together the three of them leave the chamber and move deeper into the sanctuary. The passage they follow is different from the one they used last night. This one slopes downward, the carvings on the walls growing more intricate and ancient with each step. The air becomes charged with something Jane can't quite name. Power, maybe, or history so thick it's almost tangible. They emerge into a chamber that makes the pool room look small by comparison. The space is vast enough that the far wall disappears into shadow, the ceiling so high the crystals up there look like distant stars. And everywhere, covering every available surface, are carvings of wolves. Not just any wolves. These are massive, larger than life, depicted in poses of battle and celebration and mourning. Their eyes are inlaid with different gemstones, amber, silver, emerald, ruby. And all of them, every single one, seems to be looking toward the chamber's center. Where a massive stone altar rises from the floor, its surface carved with symbols that make Jane's flame surge in recognition. The altar of becoming, Damon says quietly. Where the first wolves received the goddess's blessing. Where human and wolf were first joined into one being. Luca guides her closer, and with each step, the flame in her chest burns brighter, more insistent. By the time they reach the altar's base, silver light is leaking from her skin, painting everything around them in ghostly radiance. Don't fight it, Luca murmurs. Let it show you what it wants you to see. Jane places her hands on the altar's surface, and the world explodes into vision. She sees wolves running beneath a moon that's impossibly large, impossibly bright. Sees them gathering in a clearing that looks somehow both familiar and completely foreign. Sees a figure descending from the sky, or maybe rising from the earth, a woman made of moonlight and starlight and silver fire. The moon goddess. It has to be. The goddess speaks, and though Jane can't hear the words, she feels them resonating in her bones. Feels the power she's offering, the gift she's bestowing. Watches as the first wolves accept it, their bodies shifting and flowing, becoming something new. Something more. The vision shifts. Years pass in heartbeats. She sees the packs growing, spreading, building communities and families and traditions. Sees them strong and united, living in harmony with the blessing they've been given. Then darkness comes. Not external threat, but internal corruption. Power hunger. Greed. The desire to control rather than nurture. She sees the council of elders forming, sees them taking the goddess's words and twisting them, using them to justify cruelty and oppression and the systematic elimination of any bloodline they deemed threatening. She sees her father's pack burning. Sees wolves slaughtered for the crime of being born different. Sees her father running through flames and smoke, young and terrified and alone. And then she sees forward. Sees herself standing before packs reunited, silver flame blazing around her like a crown. Sees wolves bowing not in fear but in recognition, in acceptance of what she represents. Sees the old ways restored, the goddess's true blessing finally understood. But she also sees another path. One where she fails, where the flame consumes her, where her power becomes the weapon the elders always feared. Sees packs torn apart, territories scorched, the gift of transformation itself corrupted beyond recognition. Two futures. Two possibilities. Both hinging on choices she hasn't made yet. The vision releases her, and she stumbles backward into Luca's steadying grip. Her entire body is shaking, her skin still glowing with silver light, tears streaming down her face though she's not sure when she started crying. "What was that?" she gasps. "Truth," Damon says, his voice thick with emotion. The goddess's message, preserved in the altar's stone for whoever was strong enough to receive it. Now do you understand? This isn't just about you, Jane. It's about all of us. About reclaiming what was stolen from our kind 500 years ago. She looks at the carved wolves surrounding them, at their jeweled eyes that seem to hold both hope and warning. Looks at the twins who've anchored themselves on either side of her, their presence the only thing keeping her grounded right now. Looks down at her hands, still glowing with silver light, and feels the flame inside her chest not as a curse, but as a responsibility. The prophecy, she says slowly, working through the implications. It's not actually about me destroying the packs or saving them. It's about me revealing what they've become. Holding up a mirror and forcing them to choose who they want to be. Luca's smile is proud and relieved all at once. Exactly. You're not a weapon or a savior. You're a catalyst. A reminder of what we were meant to be. And what if they choose wrong? The fear in her voice is raw honest. What if they see me and decide the elders were right, that I'm too dangerous to be allowed to exist? Damon moves to face her, his amber eyes burning with conviction. Then we fight. Not to destroy, but to defend. Not to conquer, but to survive. Because you deserve to exist, Jane. Not despite your power, but because of it. And anyone who says different will have to go through us first. The declaration hangs in the air between them, weighted with promise and threat in equal measure. Jane realizes that she's standing at a crossroads. Behind her lies the sanctuary, safety, the possibility of hiding forever from a destiny she never wanted. Ahead lies uncertainty, danger, the weight of prophecy, and the eyes of every pack in the territory judging her every move. The silver flame pulses once, twice, steady as a heartbeat. And in that pulse, she feels something she hasn't felt since before her mother died. Purpose. Teach me, she says again, but this time the words carry more weight. Not just to control the flame, but to understand it. To use it. To become whatever it is I'm meant to be. She pauses, then adds quietly, together. Because I can't do this alone. The twins exchange one of their looks, then Luca steps closer, his hand finding her shoulder again. You'll never have to. We're pack now, Jane. And pack means forever. Damon mirrors his brother's gesture, his hand warm and solid on her other shoulder. The three of us, bound by prophecy and choice. Whatever comes, we face it together. And standing there between them, wrapped in their strength and conviction, with the altar of the first wolves at her back and an unknown future ahead, Jane feels the silver flame settle into something like peace. She's still scared, still uncertain, but she's not alone. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. 3 weeks pass in the sanctuary, and Jane learns more about herself than she did in 18 years of hiding. The twins are patient teachers, pushing her to embrace the flame rather than fear it, showing her how to channel its power with intention instead of letting emotion control it. She learns to summon the silver light at will, to shape it into barriers and weapons, to use it for healing the way Luca uses his moonlight power. She learns the old language, the words the first wolves spoke, the prayers and rituals that have been forgotten by most packs. She learns to shift. Finally, after all these years, into her wolf form, and discovers that her fur is pure white with a silver sheen, her eyes the exact shade of her flame. But most importantly, she learns what it means to be part of a real pack. Not the Silver Pine wolves who tolerated her presence while never truly accepting her, but Damon and Luca's outcasts. Wolves who gather in the sanctuary's great chamber for meals, who train together in combat and hunting, who share stories of their own rejections and the freedom they found in building something new. There's Elena, who can see glimpses of possible futures and was exiled for warning her alpha about a coming attack. There's Jace, whose strength is triple that of a normal wolf and was feared for it. There's Maya, who speaks to the spirits of dead wolves and was called witch. And a dozen others, all carrying gifts that should have been celebrated, but were instead used as justification for exile. They accept Jane immediately, completely, in a way her birth pack never did. They train with her, eat with her, treat her power as something natural and right. And slowly, so slowly she almost doesn't notice it happening, the constant knot of shame and fear she's carried for years begins to unwind. She's sparring with Elena in the training cavern, trying to anticipate movements while Elena uses her foresight to counter every attack when Nico appears in the doorway. He's one of the pack scouts, quick and clever, usually patrolling the territory boundaries. His presence here, now, makes Jane's stomach drop. Damon, Luca, he calls, his voice tight with tension. We have a situation. The twins appear from opposite sides of the cavern, moving with that synchronized grace that still sometimes takes Jane's breath away. What is it? Damon asks. Visitors. Nico's eyes flick to Jane, and she sees worry there. Silver Pine Pack. A delegation. They're requesting entry to the sanctuary under the old laws of parley. The training cavern goes quiet. Every wolf stops what they're doing, turns to watch the twins' reaction. Jane feels the silver flame leap in her chest, responding to her sudden fear. How many? Luca's voice is calm, controlled, giving nothing away. 5. Elder Thorn, 2 enforcers, and Nico hesitates. Alpha Kieran and his daughter, Sienna. Sienna. Jane's chest tightens at the name. They'd grown up together, trained together, been as close as sisters despite the pack's general rejection of Jane. Or at least, she'd thought they were close. Until the marking ceremony, when Sienna stood with the others, watching Jane be bound and threatened, and said nothing in her defense. They want to see Jane, Nico continues. Claim they have new information about the prophecy. Say it's urgent. It's a trap, Elena says immediately. Her eyes have gone distant, seeing something the rest of them can't. I see. Conflict. Division. Choices that will fracture something that was whole. Damon moves to stand beside Jane, and she feels the weight of his presence like a shield at her back. They can't enter the sanctuary without our permission. We can simply refuse them. No. The word comes from Jane before she's even consciously decided to speak. All eyes turn to her, and she feels the pressure of their attention like a physical thing. If they've come all this way, if they're requesting formal parley, I need to hear what they have to say. Jane, Luca starts, but she cuts him off. I spent my whole life running from confrontation, hiding from who I am. If I'm supposed to be this catalyst, this force for change, I can't keep hiding in the sanctuary. She looks between the twins, seeing the concern in their eyes, and softens her voice. Besides, you said pack means forever. So wherever I go, you're coming with me, right? Damon's mouth quirks in something that might be a smile if there wasn't so much worry behind it. Always. Then let them in, Jane says, drawing herself up to her full height, which isn't much, but suddenly feels like enough. Let's hear what they have to say. An hour later, they gather in the great chamber where Jane first saw the floating silver flame. The Silver Pine delegation stands on one side of the pool, the sanctuary pack on the other, with the flame burning between them like a barrier neither side is willing to cross. Elder Thorn looks older than Jane remembers, his face more lined, his eyes shadowed with something that might be regret. The enforcers flank him like statues, expressionless and alert. Alpha Kieran stands with his arms crossed, radiating displeasure at having to be here at all. And Sienna. She's changed in 3 weeks, or maybe Jane is just seeing her clearly for the first time. Her former friend looks nervous, guilty, eyes darting to Jane then away like she can't bear to hold the gaze. Jane Blackwood, Elder Thorne begins, his voice formal and stiff. We've come to. Why are you here? Jane interrupts, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. The silver flame pulses inside her chest, but it's not out of control. It's waiting, watchful, ready. You cast me out. Told the pack to kill me on sight. What could you possibly have to say to me now? Kieran bristles at her tone, but Thorne raises a hand, silencing whatever retort the Alpha was about to make. We were wrong, the Elder says, and the words seem to cost him something. Not about everything, but about some things. About you. Explain. Luca's voice cuts through the chamber, cold and commanding. He's positioned himself at Jane's right shoulder, Damon at her left, the two of them flanking her like guardian wolves. Thorne pulls a scroll from his robes, ancient and fragile-looking. I've been researching the prophecy, digging through archives that haven't been opened in centuries. And I found discrepancies. Differences between what we've been teaching and what the original texts say. You're saying you just now figured out the prophecy was altered? Damon's voice drips with skepticism. Convenient timing. I'm saying I started questioning. Thorne snaps back, some of his old authority returning. After what happened at the marking ceremony, after we cast out one of our own based on fear rather than fact, I started wondering if maybe we'd been wrong before. And the more I dug, the more inconsistencies I found. He unrolls the scroll, holding it up for them to see. The writing is in the old language, the symbols Jane has been learning. And even from this distance, even with her still limited understanding, she can see it. The words aren't about destruction. They're about transformation, about reunification, about a wolf born with the goddess's own flame who would show the packs what they'd forgotten. The silver wolf isn't a curse, Thorne says, his voice heavy. She's a reminder. A callback to what we were meant to be. Silence fills the chamber, broken only by the soft sound of water dripping somewhere in the shadows. Jane wants to feel vindicated, wants to throw his admission back in his face, wants to demand answers for all the years she spent believing she was wrong and broken. But all she feels is tired. So you've come to apologize? She asks. To say you're sorry for nearly having me killed, for making me believe I was an abomination, for casting me out of the only home I'd ever known? We've come to ask you to return, Kieran says, speaking for the first time. His voice is gruff, uncomfortable, like the words are being pulled from him against his will. The pack needs you. The territory needs you. And if the prophecy is true, if you're meant to reunite the scattered packs, you need to start with your own. My own. Jane laughs, and it comes out bitter. Silverpine isn't my pack anymore, Alpha. You made that very clear when you gave the order to kill me on sight. I was wrong, Kieran says, and the admission clearly pains him. We were all wrong. And I'm asking for the chance to make it right. Jane looks at Sienna, who's been silent through this entire exchange. And you? What do you have to say? Sienna flinches like the words were physical blows. I should have defended you, she says quietly. When they bound you, when they threatened you, I should have stood up for you. But I was scared. Scared of going against the Alpha, scared of being cast out myself, scared of, her voice breaks. I'm sorry, Jane. I'm so sorry. The apology should make her feel better. Should heal some of the hurt from that night. Instead, it just makes the wound feel fresher, rawer, because it's proof that someone could have stood with her and chose not to. I can't go back, Jane says finally. Not to live, not to submit to your authority again. I've found a real pack here. People who accepted me from the start, who never made me feel like I had to hide what I am. Then come as an ally, Thorne suggests. As a representative of the Sanctuary Pack. We're hosting a gathering in 2 weeks, all the packs in the Southern Territories. It's meant to discuss the growing threat from the north, the shadow beasts that have been attacking settlements. Shadow beasts? Damon's posture shifts, alert and tense. Those are supposed to be extinct. They haven't been seen in over a century. They're back, one of the enforcers says grimly. And they're organized in a way we've never seen before. Like something is leading them, directing them. We've lost 3 patrols in the last month alone. Jane feels ice forming in her stomach. The visions from the altar flash through her mind, darkness coming, not from without but from within. Could the shadow beasts be connected to that somehow? To the corruption she saw spreading through the packs? What does this have to do with me? She asks, though she's starting to suspect she already knows the answer. The gathering is where we plan to reveal the truth about the prophecy, Thorne explains. To present the evidence, to call for the old ways to be restored. But we need you there. The other packs need to see you, to understand that the silver wolf isn't a threat but a gift. You want me to be a symbol, Jane says flatly. A trophy you can parade in front of the other packs to prove you've changed. We want you to be what you are, Karen corrects. The catalyst. The spark that starts the fire of change. Isn't that what your prophecy says? That you'll force us to choose what we want to be. It's exactly what the prophecy says. What the visions showed her. But the idea of walking into a gathering of packs, of being scrutinized and judged by alphas and elders from across the territories, makes her flame surge with anxiety. I need to think about it, she says. Discuss it with my pack. You'll have my answer in 3 days. Thorne nods, clearly expecting this. 3 days. But Jane, please understand, the shadow beasts aren't waiting. If the packs don't unite soon, if we don't figure out how to work together instead of remaining fractured, we might not survive what's coming. The delegation leaves, escorted back through the passages by Nico and a few other scouts. The moment they're gone, the sanctuary pack erupts into argument. It's too dangerous, Elena insists. I've seen possible futures, and in half of them, she doesn't come back from that gathering. But in the other half, she becomes everything the prophecy promised, Jace counters. How can we ask her to hide when she's meant to lead? We're not asking her to hide, Maya says quietly. We're asking her to be careful. There's a difference between being a catalyst and being a sacrifice. The arguments swirl around Jane until she can't take it anymore. She slips away from the great chamber, needing space to think, needing quiet to hear her own thoughts. She finds herself back at the altar of becoming, her hands resting on its surface, seeking guidance from whatever power still lives in the ancient stone. The choice is yours. Damon's voice comes from behind her, and she turns to find both twins approaching. Whatever you decide, we'll stand with you. But Maya is right. There's a difference between fulfilling prophecy and walking blindly into danger. The shadow beasts, though, Jane says, voicing the fear that's been growing since the delegation left. If they're really back, if something is organizing them, that's bigger than pack politics or prophecies about reunification. That's an actual threat to everyone. Luca moves to stand beside her, his silver eyes thoughtful. The timing is suspicious. 500 years of peace from shadow beasts, and they return right when the silver wolf manifests? That's not coincidence. No, Jane agrees, pieces clicking together in her mind. It's connected. The corruption I saw in the visions, the way the packs turned against their own nature, against the goddess's gift, maybe that's what's calling the shadow beasts back. Maybe they feed on that darkness. Which means you really are the key, Damon says softly. Not just to reuniting the packs, but to stopping whatever's coming. Because if you can remind the packs of what they're meant to be, if you can heal that corruption, the shadow beasts lose their foothold, Jane finishes. She looks between the twins, seeing her own fear reflected back at her, but also something else. Trust. Belief. The kind of faith that makes impossible things feel achievable. I have to go to the gathering. I have to at least try. Then we prepare, Luca says firmly. Training intensifies. We make sure you can defend yourself against anything that might come. And we don't let you go alone. The 3 of us together, just like we promised. Pack means forever, Jane echoes, and feels something settle in her chest. Fear, yes, but also determination. Purpose. The understanding that some choices have to be made even when they're terrifying, because the alternative, hiding while others suffer, is worse than any danger she might face. The silver flame pulses once, strong and steady. And in that pulse, she hears an echo of the goddess's voice from her vision. Not words exactly, but a feeling. Approval. Encouragement. The sense that she's on the right path, even if that path leads through fire. 3 days later, Nico carries her answer back to Silver Pine territory. Jane will attend the gathering. She'll stand before the assembled packs and let them see what they've feared for so long. She'll be the catalyst the prophecy promised, and whatever comes of that choice, she'll face it with her pack beside her. Because some fires aren't meant to be hidden. Some flames are meant to burn bright enough to light the way through darkness, no matter how many shadows try to snuff them out. And Jane is done hiding her light. The night before the gathering, Jane can't sleep. She lies in her chamber, watching the crystals overhead cycle through their false moonlight, her mind too full of possibilities and fears to find rest. Finally, she gives up, wrapping one of the soft blankets around her shoulders and padding barefoot through the sanctuary's passages. She's not surprised when she finds Damon in the training cavern, working through combat forms with an intensity that speaks of his own restless thoughts. He moves like violence given grace, each strike and block precise and controlled, fighting invisible opponents with the kind of focus that comes from years of discipline. He senses her presence before she speaks, turning mid-strike to face her. Sweat gleams on his skin in the crystal light, his chest heaving with exertion, amber eyes sharp and assessing. Couldn't sleep either? His voice carries through the empty cavern, intimate despite the vast space. Too many thoughts, she admits, moving closer. Too many ways tomorrow could go wrong. Damon picks up a towel, wiping his face and neck as he crosses to where she stands. You want to talk about it, or would you rather spar? Sometimes the body needs to move before the mind can settle. She considers, then nods toward the practice mats. Teach me something. Not the basics you've been drilling, but something that might actually help if things go badly tomorrow. Something flickers in his eyes, approval, maybe, or respect for her directness. All right. But first, tell me what you're really afraid of. Not shadow beasts or angry alphas. What keeps you awake tonight? The question hits deeper than she expected. Jane sinks onto the edge of the mat, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. I'm afraid of failing. Not just myself, but everyone who's believed in me. You, Luca, the pack, even the stupid prophecy. I'm afraid I'll stand in front of all those wolves tomorrow and the flame won't come, or I'll lose control of it, or, her voice cracks. Or I'll prove that Elder Thorn and all the others were right to fear me. Damon settles beside her, close enough that their shoulders brush. The contact sends warmth flooding through her, though she's not sure if it's from his body heat or something deeper. Can I tell you a secret? She nods, not trusting her voice. Luca and I were terrified when we first left our pack. We had all this power, this alpha authority we were supposed to share equally, but no idea how to actually lead. We made mistakes. Terrible ones. There was a wolf, Marcus, one of the first to join us. He got killed because I sent him on patrol alone instead of with a partner. Because I was trying to prove we could cover more ground, be more efficient, and I forgot that efficiency doesn't matter if your people don't come home. The pain in his voice is raw, years old, but still fresh. Jane finds herself reaching for his hand without thinking, threading their fingers together. Marcus's death nearly broke us, Damon continues. We almost gave up, almost decided that maybe the old pack was right, that twins with alpha power were too dangerous, too incompetent to lead. But then the other outcasts, the ones who'd already joined us, they pulled us aside and said something I've never forgotten. What did they say? They said, "We didn't follow you because we expected perfection. We followed you because you see us as more than our mistakes." And that's when I realized that leadership isn't about being infallible. It's about showing up, even when you're terrified. It's about trying, even when you might fail. It's about caring enough to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. Jane absorbs this, feeling the words settle into the hollow places in her chest. What if caring isn't enough? What if I care and try and show up, and people still die because I wasn't strong enough, wasn't wise enough, wasn't whatever enough? Damon turns to face her fully, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. The gesture is gentle, achingly so, and makes her breath catch. Then you mourn them. You carry them with you. And you keep going, because the alternative is letting their deaths mean nothing. But Jane, his amber eyes burn into hers. I don't believe for a second that you're going to fail tomorrow. You want to know why? Why? The word comes out barely above a whisper. Because you're the strongest wolf I've ever met, and you don't even realize it yet. You survived 18 years in a pack that made you feel worthless. You survived the marking ceremony that should have destroyed you. You survived being hunted and cast out and alone. And instead of letting all that break you, you're here. Learning. Growing. Preparing to walk back into danger because it's the right thing to do. That's not weakness, Jane. That's power of a kind that has nothing to do with silver flames or prophecies. The intensity in his voice, in his gaze, makes something crack open inside her. Before she can think better of it, before fear can make her hesitate, she leans forward and presses her lips to his. For a heartbeat, Damon goes still, surprised. Then he's kissing her back with a gentleness that somehow makes the contact feel even more intense. His hand slides into her hair, cradling the back of her head, while his other hand remains clasped with hers like he's afraid to let go. The kiss is slow, exploring, nothing like the desperate or demanding kisses she's read about in stories. It feels like a question and an answer all at once, like a promise being made without words. When they finally break apart, Jane's heart is racing, her silver flame purring contentedly inside her chest. Damon rests his forehead against hers, his breath coming fast and shallow. I shouldn't have, she starts, but he silences her with another kiss, this one briefer but no less affecting. Don't apologize for that, he murmurs against her lips. Don't apologize for anything you actually want. I want, she stops, unsure how to finish that sentence. What does she want? Him, clearly. But it's more complicated than that. There's Luca too, and the bond she feels with him, different from what she feels with Damon but no less intense. There's the prophecy and the gathering and 100 reasons why getting emotionally entangled with her alphas right now is probably a terrible idea. But when Damon looks at her like that, like she's something precious and powerful and worth protecting, all those logical reasons fade to nothing. Come on, he says, rising and pulling her to her feet. Let me teach you that defense technique. And then maybe we should both try to get some sleep, because tomorrow is going to be long and complicated enough without us being exhausted. They train for another hour, Damon showing her how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to turn a defensive position into an offensive one in the space of a heartbeat. His hands on her body are professional now, instructive, but there's an awareness between them that wasn't there before. Every touch lingers a fraction longer than necessary. Every correction comes with eye contact that makes her pulse quicken. Finally, reluctantly, they make their way back through the passages. Damon walks her to her chamber, and at the doorway, he pauses. For what it's worth, he says quietly, I've been wanting to do that since the night we found you in that abandoned hut. You looked so fierce standing there with that broken piece of wood, ready to fight off whoever came through the door. And I thought, there she is. The one we've been waiting for. The confession makes Jane's chest ache with something too big to name. Damon. Get some sleep, Jane. Tomorrow, you're going to show them all exactly what the Silver Wolf can do. He leaves before she can respond, and she slips into her chamber with her head spinning and her heart full. She's just settled onto her bed, finally feeling like she might be able to sleep, when there's a soft knock at her doorway. Luca stands there, silver eyes reflecting the crystal light, looking uncertain in a way she's never seen from him before. I felt that is the bond. He stops, takes a breath, starts again. Can I come in? She nods, moving over to make room on the bed. Luca enters slowly, carefully, and settles beside her with more space between them than Damon kept in the training cavern. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what happened between you and my brother tonight, he says finally. Twin bond. We don't keep secrets, not really. Not about things that matter. Jane's stomach drops. Luca, I didn't mean to. That is, I don't want to come between you. Stop. His voice is gentle but firm. You're not coming between us. That's not how this works. Not for us. She looks at him, confused and hopeful and terrified all at once. Then how does it work? Luca turns to face her, and in his silver eyes, she sees the same intensity she saw in Damon's amber ones. Damon and I are two halves of the same whole. Always have been. When we lead together. When we fight together. And when we love, he pauses, letting the weight of that word settle between them. We love together. As one. Always. The implication in his words makes her breath catch. You're saying. I'm saying that what you feel for Damon, he feels for you. And what I feel for you is just as real, just as powerful, even if it manifests differently. He reaches out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucks a strand of pale hair behind her ear. I'm saying that if you want this, want us. You don't have to choose. The bond between twins is sacred, unbreakable. Anyone who bonds with one of us bonds with both. It's not typical, but then again, nothing about this situation is typical. Jane's mind reels with the implications. Two alphas. Both wanting her. Both offering not just themselves, but each other. It should feel overwhelming, impossible, wrong somehow. Instead, it feels like pieces clicking into place. I don't know how to do this, she admits. Any of this. The prophecy, the gathering, and now, this. Luca smiles, and it transforms his usually serious face into something warm and almost boyish. Neither do we. But we'll figure it out together. That's what pack means, remember? What family means. Family, Jane repeats, testing the word. She hasn't had family since her mother died. Hasn't had anyone who looked at her like she mattered beyond what she could do for them. And now here are these two alphas, offering her not just protection or alliance, but belonging. Can I? Luca hesitates, then plunges forward. Can I hold you? Just for tonight? Tomorrow is going to be hard, and I need to know that you're safe. Even if just for a few hours. Instead of answering with words, Jane leans into him, letting him wrap his arms around her and pull her against his chest. He's cooler than Damon, his moonlight power the opposite of his brother's fire, but no less comforting. She feels his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear, feels the way he relaxes once she's settled against him. Tell me something true, she murmurs into the comfortable silence. Something about you that no one else knows. Luca is quiet for a long moment, his fingers absently stroking through her hair. I see glimpses, he finally says. Visions like Elena, but different. Not possible futures, possible pasts. Moments from history, from the lives of wolves who came before us. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I see you. Not as you are now, but as you were in past lives. The same soul, the same silver flame, living and dying and being reborn across centuries. Always fighting. Always choosing to burn bright even when the world wanted you to dim. And I think I know that Damon and I have been looking for you across all those lifetimes. That this isn't the first time we've found each other, and it won't be the last. The confession is so raw, so vulnerable, that Jane feels tears prick her eyes. She tilts her head back to look at him, and sees the truth of it written in his silver gaze. That's terrifying, she whispers. And beautiful. And completely insane. Welcome to our world, Luca says with a soft laugh. Where prophecies are real, twin alphas share everything, and the girl with silver flames might just save us all. She kisses him then, because how can she not? Because he's offering her eternity and asking for nothing in return except the chance to stand beside her through whatever comes. The kiss is different from the one she shared with Damon, cooler, softer, like moonlight instead of flame, but no less devastating. When they break apart, Luca settles them both back against the pillows, keeping her tucked securely against his side. Sleep now, he murmurs. I'll keep watch. I'll make sure nothing disturbs you. And when morning comes, when it's time to face the gathering, you won't face it alone. You'll have us. Always. For the first time since the marking ceremony shattered her world, Jane feels safe. Not because she's hidden or protected from danger, but because she's found people who see all of her, the power, the fear, the scars, the potential, and choose to stand with her anyway. The silver flame pulses once, content, and she lets herself drift into sleep wrapped in moonlight and promises. Tomorrow, she'll be the catalyst. The Silver Wolf. The fulfillment of ancient prophecy. But tonight, she's just Jane. And that's more than enough. The gathering grounds are ancient, carved into a natural amphitheater in the mountains where 5 territories meet. Jane stands at the entrance with Damon and Luca flanking her, looking down at what must be over 300 wolves assembled below. Alphas and their chosen representatives from every pack in the Southern Territories, all gathered under a flag of truce that feels fragile as spider silk. She's dressed simply leather pants, a fitted shirt, boots that Damon insisted she wear even though she'd rather be barefoot. Nothing fancy, nothing that screams prophecy or power. Just practical clothing that will let her move if things go badly. The only concession to ceremony is a silver chain around her neck, ancient and delicate, that Luca fastened there this morning with shaking hands. It belonged to the first silver wolf, he'd told her. The one who lived 3,000 years ago, when the goddess's gift was new. It's been kept in the sanctuary all this time, waiting for you. Now the chain feels heavy against her collarbone, not with physical weight, but with the weight of history. 3,000 years. How many silver wolves have worn this chain? How many stood where she's standing now, preparing to face packs that feared them? We don't have to do this, Damon says quietly, though they all know that's not really true. We can walk away right now. Let them figure out their shadow beast problem without you. And let how many wolves die while the packs refuse to cooperate because they're too busy maintaining old grudges and power structures? Jane shakes her head. No, this is what I'm meant to do. Even if I'm terrified. Terrified is smart, Luca observes. Terrified means your instincts are working. A wolf approaches from the gathering grounds, one of the neutral territory guards, responsible for maintaining order. They're ready for you, she says, her eyes curious as they take in Jane's pale hair and the silver chain. Elder Thorn has called the assembly to order. This is it. The moment that will define everything that comes after. Jane takes a deep breath, feeling the silver flame pulse inside her chest. Not out of control, not overwhelming, just present. Waiting. Ready. They descend into the amphitheater together, and conversation dies as wolves catch sight of them. Whispers ripple through the crowd like wind through grass. The silver wolf. The cursed one. The child of prophecy. The destroyer. She hears all of it, feels the weight of hundreds of stares, but keeps her head high and her steps steady. Elder Thorn stands at the amphitheater center, on a raised platform with other elders from different packs. Alpha Kieran is there too, along with Sienna and a dozen other faces Jane recognizes from her time in Silverpine. They all watch her approach with expressions ranging from hope to horror. Wolves of the Southern Territories, Thorn begins, his voice carrying through the natural acoustics of the space. We have called you here to discuss 2 matters of grave importance. The first is the return of shadow beasts to our lands. The second, he pauses, looking directly at Jane. The second is a revelation that changes everything we thought we knew about our own history. He unrolls the ancient scroll he showed in the sanctuary, and another elder uses some kind of magic to project the text large enough for everyone to see. The old language glows in the air, beautiful and incomprehensible to most of the gathered wolves. This is the original prophecy, Thorn continues. Written in the moon goddess's own words, preserved in texts that have been locked away for 5 centuries. And it says something very different from what we've been taught. He reads it aloud, translating as he goes, and Jane watches the crowd's reaction. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the dawning realization that they've been lied to for generations. That the power structures they've lived under, the rules they've followed, the outcasts they've condemned, all of it was based on a deliberately twisted interpretation of divine prophecy. The Silver Wolf is not a destroyer, Thorn says, his voice heavy with something that might be shame. She is a unifier. A catalyst for change. A reminder of what we were meant to be before we let power and fear corrupt the goddess's gift. This is madness. The voice comes from the left side of the amphitheater, from an alpha Jane doesn't recognize. He's older, scarred, radiating anger and disbelief. You're telling us we've been killing silver wolves for centuries based on a lie? Yes, Thorn says simply. That is exactly what I'm telling you. Chaos erupts. Alpha's shouting questions, accusations, demanding proof or explanation or someone to blame. The neutral guards move to maintain order, but it's clear they're overwhelmed by the sheer emotional weight of what's been revealed. Jane feels the silver flame surge inside her, responding to the chaos, to her own fear and uncertainty. She's about to try to calm it when Damon's hand finds hers, grounding her. Luca's presence presses warm against her other side, steadying. Let them process, Luca murmurs. This is centuries of belief being shattered. They need time. But time, apparently, is something they don't have. Because that's when the shadow beasts attack. They pour from the forest surrounding the amphitheater like living smoke, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Creatures made of darkness and malice, with eyes like burning coals and teeth that can shred through flesh like paper. The neutral guards cry out warnings, but it's too late. The beasts are already among them, moving with terrifying speed and coordination. Wolves scatter, some shifting to their animal forms, others drawing weapons, all of them trying to defend against an enemy that seems to exist halfway between solid and shadow. Jane watches in horror as a beast tears through an elder's throat, as another drags a screaming wolf into the darkness between the trees. They were waiting, Damon snarls, his eyes flashing alpha gold as his power rises. This whole gathering was a trap. Not for the wolves, Luca says grimly, his gaze fixed on Jane. For her. Look at them, they're not spreading out. They're converging. He's right. Despite the chaos, despite the 100 different targets they could choose, the shadow beasts are all moving toward one destination. Toward Jane. The silver flame explodes inside her chest, no longer containable. Silver fire erupts from her skin, forming a barrier between her and the nearest beasts. They recoil from it, hissing and smoking where the flames touch their dark forms. The prophecy said she would destroy us, someone screams from the crowd. Look. She's calling them. She's controlling the beasts. No, Thorn shouts back. She's defending against them. The flames. But his words are lost in the chaos. Wolves are running, fighting, dying. And through it all, Jane stands frozen, watching her worst fear come to life. Not that she would lose control of her power, but that others would see that power and blame her for every terrible thing happening around them. A figure emerges from the shadows at the amphitheater's edge. A woman Jane has never seen before, dressed in robes that seem to absorb light, her eyes empty of everything except cold calculation. So this is the great silver wolf, the woman says, her voice carrying despite the chaos. The one prophesied to reunite the packs. Tell me, child, how does it feel to know your existence is what called my army forth? Who are you? Jane demands, keeping the silver flame burning bright around her and the twins. I am Morgana. Witch, survivor, keeper of the old grudges. The woman's smile is terrible. 500 years ago, your kind killed my sisters. Burned us as abominations for practicing magic that predated your precious goddess's gift. We begged for mercy, for sanctuary in the packs we'd helped build. And you slaughtered us like animals. That wasn't her, Damon growls. That wasn't any of us. Those crimes belong to our ancestors, not. And the sins of the fathers shall be visited upon the children, Morgana interrupts. Isn't that what they say? I have spent centuries gathering power, binding shadow beasts to my will, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back at the creatures who destroyed my kind. Her eyes fix on Jane with terrible intensity. And then the prophecy stirred. The silver wolf began to manifest. And I realized what better revenge than to make your savior your destroyer. To twist the prophecy one final time, to ensure that every wolf who sees you will see only death and flame. She gestures, and the shadow beasts surge forward as one. Jane's flame blazes brighter, but there are too many of them. They press against her barrier from all sides, smoking and hissing, but driven forward by Morgana's will. Jane! Sienna's voice cuts through the chaos. Her former friend is fighting her way toward the platform, blood on her face, desperation in her eyes. You have to run. She's using the beasts to force you to attack, to make it look like you're the threat. If you unleash your full power, the packs will never trust you. And Jane sees it. The trap within the trap. If she holds back, the beasts will overwhelm them, and wolves will die. If she unleashes the silver flame at full strength, if she burns bright enough to destroy Morgana's army, the gathered packs will see only a wolf with power enough to kill them all. Either way, the prophecy fails. Either way, the packs remain divided. No, she whispers, then louder, no. I won't choose between salvation and destruction. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Morgana says, her voice thick with satisfaction. You are what they made you, child. A weapon. And weapons can only destroy. But even as she speaks, Jane feels something shift inside her. The silver flame pulses once, twice, and suddenly she understands. The prophecy was never about her power alone. It was about connection. Unity. Pack. She turns to Damon and Luca, seeing her own realization reflected in their eyes. The bond, she says. Twin alphas and the silver wolf. That's the key. What are you thinking? Luca asks, though something in his expression says he already knows. I'm thinking that Morgana is right about one thing. I can't do this alone. But the prophecy never said I had to. She extends her hands to them, and they take them without hesitation. Merge with me. Share the flame. Let me show them what unity really looks like. The moment their hands connect, power floods through all three of them. Not just Jane's silver flame, but Damon's alpha fire and Luca's moonlight healing. 3 different gifts, 3 different wolves, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. The silver flame explodes outward, but this time it's controlled. Directed. Instead of burning, it illuminates. Instead of destroying, it reveals. The light pours over every wolf in the amphitheater, and with it comes understanding. They feel what Jane feels, not destruction, but hope. Not curse, but blessing. The goddess's original intent, before fear twisted it into something dark. And the shadow beasts? The flame doesn't burn them. It transforms them. Tears away the corruption Morgana has bound them with and reveals what they truly are. Spirits of wolves long dead, trapped and enslaved and forced to serve a witch's vengeance. No, Morgana screams as her army dissolves into light, as the spirits are finally released from her control. No, 500 years. 500 years of planning, of waiting, of building. Should have spent that time learning to let go instead of holding grudges, Jane says, her voice resonating with power that's not just hers. Revenge might feel satisfying, but it's a poison that destroys the holder long before it touches the intended target. The witch's face twists with rage and something that might be despair. For a moment, Jane thinks she'll attack directly. Then Morgana simply fades, dissolving into shadow and mist, her parting words echoing through the amphitheater. This isn't over, Silver Wolf. My sister's ghosts cry for justice, and I will give it to them, no matter how many lifetimes it takes. Then she's gone, and the amphitheater falls into stunned silence. Jane becomes aware of several things simultaneously. The silver flame is receding, pulling back into her chest alongside the echoes of Damon and Luca's power. Her legs are shaking with exhaustion, and hundreds of wolves are staring at her with expressions she can't quite read. Elder Thorn is the first to move. He drops to one knee, head bowed in a gesture of submission and respect that Jane has only seen given to pack alphas. The prophecy is true, he says, his voice carrying through the silent space. And we have been blind fools. One by one, other wolves follow his example. Alphas and elders, warriors and healers, wolves from every pack in the southern territories. They kneel not in fear, but in recognition. In acceptance. But not all of them. That scarred alpha from before remains standing, his face twisted with suspicion. How do we know this isn't another trick? How do we know she's not controlling all of us right now, making us see what she wants us to see? Because if I was controlling you, Jane says, her voice weary but clear, you wouldn't still be questioning me. You'd be worshipping me without thought, without choice. The flame shows truth, but it doesn't force acceptance. That's still up to you. The alpha stares at her for a long moment, then slowly, reluctantly, he too kneels. I don't know if I trust you yet, Silver Wolf. But you're right about one thing, we need to change. And maybe you're the catalyst that makes that possible. Maybe, Jane agrees. Or maybe I'm just the spark, and the rest of you will have to carry the flame forward yourselves. Because I'm not here to rule you or save you or make decisions for you. I'm here to remind you what you could be if you chose unity over division. Damon squeezes her hand, and she realizes she's still holding onto both twins like they're the only solid things in a world gone mad. I think that's enough prophecy fulfillment for one day, he murmurs. Let's get you somewhere safe before you collapse. But before they can move, Sienna pushes through the crowd, her face desperate. Jane, wait. Please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I failed you when you needed me most. But let me make it right. Let me stand with you now, if you'll have me. Jane looks at her former friend, seeing the guilt and hope and determination written across her features. She could reject her. Could point out all the ways Sienna's silence contributed to her pain. Could make her hurt the way she was hurt. But the silver flame inside her chest pulses once, warm and steady, and Jane remembers what it felt like to be offered acceptance when she expected condemnation. Remembers Damon and Luca choosing to save her when they could have let her die. Stand with me, she says, and watch his relief flood Sienna's face. But know that it won't be easy. Nothing about this path will be easy. And I'm going to need more than just words next time things get difficult. You'll have them, Sienna promises. You'll have whatever I can give. That's an oath. The moment feels significant, though Jane's not entirely sure why. It's just one wolf, one former friend, offering loyalty. But maybe that's how change starts, not with grand gestures or dramatic prophecies, but with individual choices, one person at a time, deciding to do better than they did before. Elder Thorn rises, and the other kneeling wolves follow his lead. We have much to discuss, he says. Plans to make, alliances to forge, defenses to coordinate against future attacks. But first, I think we owe you something, Jane Blackwood. An apology that's 5 centuries overdue. Keep your apology, Jane says, surprising herself with the hardness in her voice. I don't want pretty words. I want action. I want you to find every wolf you've ever exiled for being different and offer them sanctuary. I want you to rewrite your laws so that power is shared instead of hoarded. I want you to dismantle the structures that let fear and prejudice masquerade as tradition. Can you do that? The elders exchange glances, uncomfortable with the directness of her demands. Finally, Thorn nods. We can try. It won't happen overnight. Old systems die hard. But yes, Silver Wolf, we can try. Then that's all I ask. Try. And let me know if you need help burning down anything that refuses to change. She smiles, and it's not entirely kind. Because I've discovered I'm very good at fire. Nervous laughter ripples through the gathered wolves, and Jane feels some of the tension ease. They're not enemies anymore, these packs and their representatives. But they're not quite allies either. There's something in between, balanced on the knife edge of possibility, and which way they fall will depend on the choices they make in the coming days and weeks and months. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, Jane lets Damon and Luca guide her away from the amphitheater, back toward the sanctuary, where her pack waits with worried faces and anxious questions. Tonight, she lets herself be just a wolf who's tired and scared and desperately in need of rest. The silver flame pulses inside her chest, quieter now, satisfied with what was accomplished but not finished. Never finished, because the work of change is never truly done. Tomorrow, they'll start building the new world the prophecy promised. Tomorrow, they'll face whatever challenges come from wolves who resist change and witches who harbor ancient grudges. But tonight, Jane is alive. Her pack is safe. And the prophecy, for better or worse, has begun to unfold. That will have to be enough. 3 months pass and the world shifts on its axis. The packs don't transform overnight. Change never works that way. But slowly, gradually, things begin to move. Exiled wolves return to their territories, not as outcasts, but as valued members. Laws get rewritten, old hierarchies questioned, new alliances formed between packs that haven't spoken peacefully in generations. Jane spends her days traveling between territories with Damon and Luca, mediating disputes, training young wolves who show unusual gifts, reminding alphas and elders of the oaths they swore at the gathering. It's exhausting work, made harder by the wolves who still view her with suspicion, who whisper about cursed bloodlines and dangerous power. But there's progress too. Elena's visions are no longer cause for exile, but for consultation. Jace's strength is used to help build structures instead of being feared. Maya's ability to speak with dead wolves brings comfort to those grieving their lost pack members. The Sanctuary pack has grown from a dozen outcasts to almost 50 wolves, all of them carrying gifts that were once condemned. And then, on a cold autumn night, Morgana returns. The attack comes at midnight, when most wolves are sleeping or settled in for the night. Jane is in the Sanctuary's great chamber with Damon, Luca, and a handful of others, discussing plans for a gathering of young wolves who want to learn better control of their emerging gifts. They're laughing over something Jace said when the first scream echoes through the passages. The laughter dies immediately. Everyone on their feet, senses straining, feeling the wrongness that's seeping into the Sanctuary's protected space like poison into a wound. That shouldn't be possible, Luca says, his silver eyes wide with disbelief. The old magic protects this place. Nothing dark should be able to enter. Unless someone invited them in, Damon growls. Or unless someone's power is strong enough to corrupt the protections themselves. Another scream, closer this time. Then the sound of fighting, of bodies hitting stone, of terrified wolves crying out for help. Jane is already moving, the silver flame leaping to life inside her chest. She runs through the passages with the twins flanking her, following the sounds of combat back toward the living quarters. What she finds makes her blood run cold. Shadow beasts pour through the corridors, dozens of them, but these are different from the ones at the gathering. These are larger, more solid, radiating malice that feels almost intelligent. And leading them, her face twisted with triumphant rage, is Morgana. But she's not alone. Behind her, chained and stumbling, are wolves. Real wolves, not shadow beasts. Their eyes are empty, their movements jerky like puppets on strings, and with a sick lurch, Jane recognizes some of them. Wolves from packs that refused to change, that resisted the new alliances, that clung to the old ways with bitter desperation. Welcome back, Silverwolf, Morgana calls, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. Did you really think I would simply disappear? That centuries of planning would be undone by one display of pretty lights? Let them go, Jane demands, gesturing to the controlled wolves. Whatever you're doing to them, stop it. They're innocent. Innocent. Morgana laughs, and the sound is jagged glass. These are the wolves who cheered when my sisters burned. Who hunted us through the forests, who tore our children from our arms, who showed no mercy when we begged for it. There is no innocence here, only delayed justice. These wolves weren't even alive 500 years ago. Luca shouts. You're punishing people for crimes they never committed. And you punish me for existing, Morgana snaps back. Fair is fair, Moonchild. Now, she turns her attention back to Jane, and something in her expression makes the silver flame surge with warning. I've spent the last 3 months studying you, watching from the shadows. And I've learned something interesting about that pretty flame of yours. She gestures, and the controlled wolves lurch forward, their hands reaching for their own throats. Jane watches in horror as they begin to strangle themselves, their fingers tightening with inhuman strength. Stop. The silver flame explodes from Jane's skin, racing toward the controlled wolves, trying to break whatever hold Morgana has on them. Yes, the witch breathes. Yes, that's it. Use your power. Save them. Show me the full extent of the flame. Too late, Jane realizes the trap. The silver light touches the controlled wolves, and instead of freeing them, it does something else. Something terrible. The flame is absorbed into them, pulled in by whatever magic Morgana has used, and the wolves begin to change. Their eyes fill with silver fire. Their bodies twist and grow. They become something neither wolf nor shadow beast, but a horrible fusion of both. Monsters. Corrupted by Jane's own power, twisted into weapons by Morgana's skill. No. Jane tries to pull the flame back, but it's too late. The damage is done. 6 wolves turned into abominations, their humanity and wolf nature both destroyed by a combination of witch magic and goddess power that should never have met. Perfect, Morgana says with satisfaction. Now everyone will see what the silver wolf truly is. Not a savior, but a corrupter. Not a unifier, but a destroyer. Your flame doesn't just illuminate, child. In the wrong circumstances, it transforms. And not always for the better. The corrupted wolves attack, moving with terrifying speed. They're stronger than normal wolves, more vicious than shadow beasts, and completely without mercy or reason. Jane watches as one tears into Jace, as another goes for Maya's throat, and feels something break inside her. This is her fault. Her power, her flame, turned into a weapon that's hurting the very wolves she swore to protect. Jane, focus. Damon is beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. This is what she wants. For you to lose control, to feel responsible, to break under the weight of what your power can do wrong. But you're not responsible for how she twisted your gift. Do you hear me? This is not your fault. They're suffering because of me, Jane whispers, watching the corrupted wolves rampage through the sanctuary. Because I tried to help. Because she's spent 5 centuries perfecting ways to twist anything good into something dark, Luca interrupts, his voice firm. That's what corruption is, Jane. Taking something pure and finding the one way to break it. But you're not broken. The flame isn't broken. And we can fix this. How? She feels tears streaming down her face, hot and bitter. How do I fix wolves who've been transformed by my own power? The same way you fix the shadow beasts at the gathering, Damon says. Not by fighting alone, but by uniting. By merging your power with ours and showing them what they were meant to be instead of what she's made them. Jane looks at the twins, seeing absolute conviction in their eyes. Seeing faith that she's not sure she deserves, but desperately needs. What if it doesn't work? What if I make it worse? Then we make it worse together, Luca says simply. But I don't think we will. Because your flame doesn't corrupt, Jane. It reveals. And right now, we're going to reveal the truth about what these wolves really are beneath Morgana's magic. They join hands, Jane in the center, Damon and Luca on either side, and let their powers merge. The silver flame rises, but this time it's tempered by Damon's alpha fire and Luca's moonlight healing. 3 gifts becoming one, balanced and whole. The merged power flows outward, washing over the corrupted wolves. They howl and thrash, fighting against it, but Jane holds firm. She pushes past the surface corruption, past Morgana's twisted magic, searching for the spark of wolf that still exists somewhere inside these broken creatures. And she finds it. Buried deep, imprisoned by dark magic and their own horror at what they've become, but still alive. Still fighting. Come back, Jane whispers, pouring everything she has into the flame. You are not monsters. You are wolves. Your pack. And we do not abandon our pack, no matter how lost they become. The silver light intensifies, pushing back the darkness, burning away the corruption not with destruction, but with purification. The twisted forms begin to shift, to change, to return to something recognizable. It's agonizing work, fighting against magic that's had 5 centuries to perfect itself, but Jane doesn't stop. Can't stop. Because these wolves deserve better than to be weapons in someone else's war. One by one, the corrupted wolves collapse, their bodies finally settling back into their natural forms. They're alive barely, but themselves again. Traumatized, exhausted, but free from Morgana's control. No. The witch's scream is fury and frustration combined. That's not possible. That much corruption should be irreversible. Nothing is irreversible when you have pack, Jane says, her voice ringing with power that's not entirely hers. That's what you never understood. That's why you lost 500 years ago and why you're losing now. Because you're alone, Morgana. And we are Legion. The other sanctuary wolves have rallied now, forming a circle around Jane and the twins, their own gifts adding to the merged power. Elena's foresight shows them where Morgana will strike next. Jace's strength reinforces the sanctuary's walls. Maya calls on the spirits of wolves long dead, ancient guardians who remember the first witches and know how to counter their magic. Together, they push back. Not just against Morgana, but against everything she represents, the old grudges, the cycle of revenge, the belief that past crimes justify present cruelty. You could join us, Jane calls out, making one last attempt to reach whatever humanity might still exist in the witch. Whatever was done to your sisters was wrong. Unforgivable. But continuing the cycle of violence doesn't honor their memory, it desecrates it. Help us build something better. Help us make sure no one else suffers the way they did. For a moment, just a moment, something flickers in Morgana's eyes. Something that might be longing or regret or simply exhaustion from carrying hatred for so long. Then it's gone, buried under centuries of pain. I am long past redemption, Silver Wolf. And I will not stop until every wolf who breathes pays for what was stolen from me. She raises her hands, and Jane feels magic gathering, feels the air itself preparing to tear apart. But before Morgana can unleash whatever devastating spell she's prepared, something unexpected happens. Sienna steps forward from the ranks of sanctuary wolves, her face set with determination. I call on the old law, she shouts, her voice carrying through the chamber. Trial by combat. The witch against the pack's champion. Winner determines the fate of the defeated. Everyone freezes. The old law is ancient, predating even the moon goddess's blessing. It's a way of settling disputes that can't be resolved through negotiation, binding magic that forces both sides to honor the outcome. Sienna, no, Jane starts, but Sienna cuts her off. I failed you once, Jane. Let me make it right. Let me fight for the pack that gave me a second chance. You can't, Luca says, his voice tight with worry. Sienna, she's a 500-year-old witch. Her power is vast but scattered, Elena interrupts, her eyes distant with vision. She's spent centuries gathering pieces of magic from different sources, but they don't work together seamlessly. A wolf with enough determination, enough focus, they could exploit those gaps. Morgana is laughing, harsh and mocking. You think one wolf can defeat me? I've killed hundreds of your kind, child. What makes you special? Nothing, Sienna says simply. I'm not special. I'm not chosen. I'm just a wolf who's tired of watching other people fight battles that should be ours. And I'm done being a coward. She shifts into her wolf form, a beautiful golden creature with intelligent brown eyes, and bares her teeth. Do you accept my challenge, witch? Morgana's eyes gleam with malicious glee. Oh, I accept. And when you're dead, when your precious silver wolf watches you bleed out for her sake, remember that you asked for this. The old law activates with a flash of light, creating a circle of binding magic that neither combatant can leave until one is defeated. Sienna and Morgana circle each other, predator and prey, though it's not immediately clear which is which. Jane wants to intervene, wants to break the circle and pull Sienna back, but Damon's hand on her arm stops her. The old law can't be broken without consequence. If you interfere, you forfeit not just Sienna's life, but the lives of everyone she's fighting for. So Jane can only watch as her former friend, now redeemed, now pack, fights a battle that seems hopeless from the start. Morgana strikes first, sending bolts of dark magic that should tear Sienna apart. But the wolf is fast, using the confines of the circle to her advantage, dodging and weaving and forcing the witch to constantly adjust her aim. Each missed attack frustrates Morgana more, makes her sloppy, makes those gaps Elena mentioned more apparent. Sienna doesn't try to match magic with magic. She can't. She's just a wolf, gifted with speed and cunning, but nothing supernatural. Instead, she does what wolves have always done: she hunts. She watches for patterns, tests defenses, looks for the moment of weakness that every creature eventually reveals. And when Morgana overextends herself, when she puts too much power into a spell that misses its target, Sienna strikes. Not at the witch's body, but at the pendant around her neck, the source of her power, the focus through which she channels 5 centuries of gathered magic. Sienna's teeth close around the pendant, and she tears it free, spitting it beyond the circle where Maya immediately crushes it beneath her boot. The effect is instantaneous. Morgana screams as her power unravels, as the magic she's so carefully gathered over centuries dissipates into nothing. She collapses, suddenly looking every one of her 500 years, aged and broken and mortal for the first time in half a millennium. The binding circle drops. Sienna shifts back to human form, breathing hard, blood matting her fur from a dozen minor wounds. But alive. Victorious. The old law is satisfied, Elena says, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. The defeated's fate belongs to the victors. What would you have us do with her? Every eye turns to Jane, waiting for judgment. She could order Morgana killed. Could demand revenge for the attacks, for the corrupted wolves, for 5 centuries of planning death for her kind. No one would question it. The witch has earned execution 100 times over. But Jane thinks about cycles of violence, about grudges carried across generations, about the cost of choosing revenge over redemption. Strip her of magic, Jane says finally. All of it. Every spell, every enchantment, every ounce of power she's gathered. Return her to what she was before hatred consumed her, just a human woman who lost her family too soon. That's a mercy she doesn't deserve, Damon says quietly, though there's approval in his voice. Maybe not, Jane agrees. But it's the mercy I'm choosing anyway. Because I'm not going to build a new world on the foundation of old cruelties. Not even cruelties visited on those who've hurt us. She looks directly at Morgana, seeing the hatred and defeat warring in the witch's eyes. You wanted revenge for your sisters. I understand that. But this is where it ends. You can spend whatever years you have left carrying that hatred, or you can learn to let it go and find some kind of peace. That choice is yours. Maya and Elena work together to strip the remaining magic from Morgana's body, leaving her powerless and mortal. The witch doesn't fight it, just stares at Jane with an expression that might be respect or might be loathing or might be simple exhaustion. When it's done, they escort her to the sanctuary's edge and let her go, watching as she stumbles into the forest alone. Jane doesn't know if she'll survive out there without power or protection. Doesn't know if she'll find peace or simply another reason for hatred. But that's not Jane's responsibility anymore. She's done what she can, offered the grace she was able to give. The rest is up to Morgana. The sanctuary wolves gather in the great chamber, tending wounds, comforting those who were traumatized by the attack, mourning the one wolf who didn't survive the initial assault. The cost of tonight weighs heavy on all of them, a reminder that prophecy and power don't make them invincible. They can still be hurt. They can still lose people they care about. But they're alive. They're together. And they chose mercy over revenge even when revenge would have been easier. Sienna approaches Jane hesitantly, her wounds bandaged but still visible. Thank you, she says softly, for letting me fight. For giving me a chance to prove I'm not the coward who stood silent while you were condemned. Jane pulls her into a hug, feeling the other wolf tense then relax into the embrace. You proved that the moment you challenged her. But Sienna, don't ever do something that reckless again without talking to me first. I can't lose anyone else. Not when we're just starting to build something real. Deal, Sienna says with a watery laugh. No more heroic sacrifices without permission. Damon and Luca approach, and the 5 of them, Jane, the twins, Sienna, and Elena, stand together looking at the floating silver flame at the chamber's center. It burns steady and bright, untouched by the violence that nearly shattered the sanctuary tonight. The prophecy's not finished, Elena observes. I can see the threads still weaving, still pulling us toward something. This was just one battle, not the war. Let it come, Jane says, feeling the silver flame pulse inside her chest in agreement. Whatever else is waiting out there, whatever other threats or challenges or impossible choices, we'll face them. Together. As pack. As family, Luca corrects gently. As the future, Damon adds, his amber eyes bright with conviction. Jane looks around the chamber at the wolves gathered there, at the outcasts and misfits who've become her chosen family, and feels something settle in her chest that might be hope, or might be determination, or might be simple acceptance of who and what she's become. She is the Silver Wolf. The catalyst. The keeper of the flame that will either light the way to a better future or burn the old world to ashes. But she's not alone. Has never been alone. Not really. Not since two twin alphas knocked on the door of an abandoned hut and offered her salvation when she expected only judgment. The silver flame burns bright inside her chest, and for the first time since it manifested, Jane doesn't fear it. She embraces it, claims it, makes it hers in a way that has nothing to do with prophecy and everything to do with choice. She is not a weapon. She is not a curse. She is not anyone's sacrifice or anyone's salvation. She is simply herself, Jane, the wolf with silver fire in her veins and hope in her heart, and that, finally, is enough. The silver flame burns steady in the great chamber as dawn breaks over the sanctuary. Jane stands alone now, the others having finally been convinced to rest after the long night of battle and healing. She watches the crystals overhead shift from darkness to the gentle purple of false dawn and thinks about everything that's happened since she ran through a storm-dark forest 3 months ago. She was so different then. Scared. Ashamed of her power. Convinced that being different meant being wrong. Now she knows better. Now she understands that being different isn't a curse, it's a responsibility. A chance to show others that the boundaries they've accepted, the limitations they've imposed, are illusions that can be shattered. But the responsibility is heavy. Tonight proved that. The corrupted wolves are healing, but they'll carry the trauma of what happened to them for the rest of their lives. The sanctuary's protections were breached, proving they're not as safe as everyone believed. And Morgana is still out there somewhere, stripped of power but not of hatred, and who knows what she might do with the years she has left. You're thinking too much again. Luca's voice comes from behind her, and she turns to find both twins approaching, their movements synchronized as always. I can practically hear your thoughts spiraling from across the sanctuary. Someone has to think, Jane says, but there's no heat in it. Someone has to plan for what comes next, for the threats we haven't seen yet for everything, Damon finishes. You want to be responsible for everything, solve every problem, protect every wolf. But Jane, that's not sustainable. You're going to burn yourself out. Better me than someone else. The words come out more bitter than she intended. I'm the one with the prophetic flame, remember? I'm the one who's supposed to. Supposed to what? Luca interrupts gently. Be perfect? Never falter? Carry the weight of the entire wolf world on your shoulders without ever asking for help? That's not what the prophecy says. That's not what the goddess intended. Jane turns back to the floating flame, feeling its echo inside her chest. Then what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to fulfill this destiny everyone keeps talking about without carrying the weight of every choice, every consequence, every life that might be lost because I made the wrong decision? The twins move to flank her, their presence is warm and solid on either side. Damon speaks first. You do what you did tonight. You make the best choice you can with the information you have, and then you trust your pack to stand with you through the consequences. You don't have to be perfect, Jane. You just have to be present. And when present isn't enough, she asks. When wolves die despite my best efforts. When the prophecy demands more than I can give. Then you mourn, Luca says quietly. You grieve. You let yourself feel the weight of what's been lost. And then you keep going, because the alternative is giving up, and that's not who you are. Jane closes her eyes, letting their words settle into the hollow places inside her. They're right, she knows. She can't control everything, can't prevent every tragedy, can't be responsible for every wolf in every territory. But knowing that intellectually and accepting it emotionally are two different things. I keep thinking about the corrupted wolves, she admits. About how my power, my flame, was twisted into something that hurt them. What if that happens again? What if next time I can't fix it? What if my gift becomes the weapon everyone always feared it would be? Then we'll deal with it, Damon says firmly. Together. But Jane, you can't let fear of what might go wrong prevent you from using your gifts. That's just another kind of prison, and you've spent too much of your life caged by other people's fears to let your own lock you up now. She opens her eyes, looking at each twin in turn. Sees the conviction in their gazes, the absolute certainty that she's worthy of the power she carries. It should comfort her. Does comfort her in a way. But there's still a question that's been haunting her since the gathering, a fear she hasn't voiced to anyone. What if I'm not enough? The words come out small, vulnerable. What if the prophecy was wrong, or the goddess made a mistake, or I'm just not strong enough to be what everyone needs me to be? Luca takes her hand, his silver eyes holding hers. Then you're not enough alone. But you're not alone, remember? You have us. You have the pack. You have every wolf who's chosen to stand with you and believe in the possibility of a better future. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Damon adds, taking her other hand. The prophecy was never about you doing it alone, Jane. It was about you being the spark that ignites change in others. And you've done that. You've already changed so much. The rest, rebuilding the packs, defending against threats, creating the world we want instead of the one we inherited, that's work for all of us. Not just the Silver Wolf, but everyone who's chosen her side. Chosen her side. The words resonate somewhere deep in Jane's chest, making the flame pulse with recognition. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not forcing change, but offering a choice. Not demanding submission, but inviting alliance. Not ruling through fear, but leading through example. I'm scared, she admits, the confession both liberation and surrender. I'm scared of failing. Scared of losing people I care about. Scared that even if we succeed, the cost will be too high. But I'm also... She pauses, searching for the right words. I'm also hopeful. For the first time in my life, I'm hopeful that maybe the world can be different. That maybe we can be different. And that has to mean something, right? It means everything, both twins say in unison, and the moment is so perfectly them that Jane actually laughs. The sound echoes through the great chamber, bright and genuine, chasing away some of the heaviness that's been pressing down on her since the attack. She's not alone. She has her pack, her family, her twin alphas who somehow see her as both powerful and fragile, as someone worth protecting and someone capable of incredible things. The silver flame pulses once, strong and steady, and Jane feels it not as a burden but as a gift. Not something to fear or control, but something to embrace and celebrate and use in service of the better world they're all trying to build. So what happens now, she asks, looking between the twins. After tonight, after everything. What's next? Damon's smile is fierce and protective all at once. Now we rebuild. Strengthen the sanctuary's defenses. Reach out to more packs, convince more wolves that change is possible. And we prepare, because Morgana might be powerless, but she's not the only threat out there. The shadow beasts came from somewhere. They were drawn to something. And until we understand what, we can't afford to let our guard down. Practical as always, Luca observes with fond exasperation. But he's right. The work continues. The prophecy continues. And we continue, day by day, choice by choice, building the future we want to see. Jane nods, feeling purpose settle over her shoulders like a mantle. Heavy, yes, but not unbearable. Not when she has people to share the weight with. Together, she says, and it's a vow and a prayer and a promise all at once. Together, the twins echo, and the word feels like magic of its own. The false dawn outside the sanctuary gives way to true morning, and somewhere in the world above, real wolves are waking to a changed reality. Packs are learning to work together. Exiled wolves are finding sanctuary. Old laws are being questioned, old structures dismantled, old fears challenged. It's not perfect. It's messy and difficult and sometimes painfully slow. But it's happening. Change is happening. And at the center of it all, burning bright enough to light the way through any darkness, is a girl with silver fire in her veins who finally understands that being different isn't a curse, it's a gift. Would you have chosen her side? If you were one of those wolves at the gathering, if you'd seen the silver flame and felt its power, would you have knelt in acceptance or stood in rejection? Would you have seen the destroyer everyone feared or the savior the prophecy promised? The question isn't hypothetical, not really. Because every day, in our own lives, we're faced with the same choice. Do we embrace what's different, what challenges us, what asks us to be better than we've been? Or do we retreat into fear, into the comfortable certainty of old ways and old thinking, even when those ways no longer serve us? Jane chose to burn bright even when the world wanted her to stay hidden. Chose to hope even when fear would have been easier. Chose to fight for a better future even when the present seemed overwhelming. What would you choose? If this story lit something inside you, if you felt the fear and the hope and the desperate hunger for a world that celebrates difference instead of condemning it, then I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, in this space, we tell tales that burn. Stories about wolves who refuse to hide, about outcasts who become family, about power that transforms instead of destroys. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me whose side you're on. Team Jane all the way, or are there Team Morgana sympathizers out there who think the witch had a point about revenge? Let's talk about it. Let's build a pack of our own right here, where the only requirement for membership is a willingness to believe that we can be better than we've been. The silver flame is burning, friends. And the question isn't whether you'll see its light, it's whether you'll let it transform you. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. And whatever you choose, own it with your whole heart. Because here at Cindy's Wolfheart Stories, we don't tell safe stories. We tell stories that challenge and change and burn bright enough to light the way through any darkness. Welcome to the pack. The adventure is just beginning.